You're listening to Landlord Tenant World. It's a landlord tenant world out there, and welcome to it. I'm Doug Scheinmel with Hapco Philadelphia. I'm your host for the podcast that looks at the single greatest industry in the entire universe, being a rental and investment property owner. I say this at the start of every show. Half of Philadelphia residents are renters, making it the largest city of landlords and tenants in the country, and Hapco Philadelphia is the largest rental advocacy group in the country as well. And I want to mention to you first, before we get to our star today, coming up on Landlord Tenant World, we've got new developments in Philly's eviction diversion program, and also the semi-controversial landlord tenant office from Hapco Philadelphia's legal eagle, who's back from like a 3-week out of the country trip. Paul Cohen's going to be back with us today. And just before Paul is a woman who has gone from a college tennis star to rental property owner to Hapco Philadelphia. We're going to meet one of our newest board members, Jevi Jadeja. I told her I'd get really close on that. But up first, they have, in the last year and a half, 2 years, have become one of Hapco Philadelphia's trusted partners when it comes to research affecting rental and investment property owners. Their website is really one of the Bibles for surveys about the apartment industry. And their most recent survey puts Philly for the first time ever in the top 10 for rental desirability in the United States. Here from rentcafe.com is their manager of business intelligence, a big landlord tenant world. Welcome to Mr. Doug Ressler. Doug, how are you today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Hey, where are you zooming in from today? Are you out in Arizona?
I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Oh, good Lord. What's the temperature there?
It's supposed to be 80 today.
Oh, that's a cool day for you guys, isn't it? You guys
Right.
are in the triple digits. Hey, many of our viewers and Hapco Philadelphia members already know who Rent Cafe is, but for a lot of the folks who don't, who are you guys and what got you into the rental and apartment research business? It seems like such a niche industry, but your numbers are just phenomenal when we see them every month.
Sure. Yardi Systems is our parent organization. It's based in Santa Barbara. It's worldwide. Rent Cafe is a subdivision
Right.
of Yardi Systems, and it's a B2C type of business applications where we do research with Yardi Matrix that does most of the calls and research arm. And we combine that with the media that Rent Cafe has to be able to inform consumers, the B2C consumer of rental apartments, what to look for, where to find the best opportunities, etc.
And what are the kind of metrics you guys use? Because each month you do the rental desirability thing, but you also have some little subcategories that look at other different metrics. Are you pulling these from your own sources? Are you pulling them from apartment listings? Where do they come from?
We do all our own research. We have quite an extensive effort. It's very labor intensive. It's very dynamic. And we think that's one of the value propositions that we add to the research data that we present. What we do is we pull different type of metrics from the standpoint of everything from rental rates,
Right.
occupancy rates, loan information, application surveys, things like that. It goes the wide gamut.
It's pretty comprehensive. And as I mentioned in the open, Philly is the largest city of renters in the country, with nearly 50% of the population here renting apartments, which is very unusual. And a lot of those folks are renting from Hapco Philadelphia's members. How unusual is it, given the metrics, to see a city that is basically half renters?
Well, what we see in Philadelphia, it's 55% the way we track it in
Yep.
terms of renters, and it's quite a diverse population. Moving, we have different types of classifications. Discretionary renters are those that could afford to buy but choose to rent,
Yeah.
all the way down to workforce and affordable. So Philly presents a wide opportunity and certainly a wide geography in terms of the different type of renters and consumers that are in the Philadelphia area and the type of housing that they're looking for.
And it may be the same. I know we've run into this with our lead testing compliance. Philly has the probably the largest inventory of old housing stock built before 1978 when lead paint was outlawed. And we only know that because we've had laws passed in the city to require testing and remediation. But it's got a pretty old housing stock. There's a lot of new stuff coming along online. But are we kind of some of the older housing stock in the country?
It is one of the things that we also do is we track conversions. And so Philadelphia right now has 975 units that are being converted. And of that, most of the buildings were built in the 1920s.
Yeah,
They could vary between schools, warehouses, things like that. They're number 14th on the list in terms of the number of conversions that are occurring this year. Of all the markets we cover nationwide, 100 and over 170 markets.
yeah.
But
And
uh,
that's one of the things Philly has sort of prided itself on is maintaining, the original housing stock and doing renovations. There's certainly a tear down and new construction syndrome that's been going on recently, and a lot of complaints about that in the city. But for the most part, people go in there and they rehab the older structures. You guys just put out a study just within the last week or so that puts Philly in the top 10 for rental desirability. And as we post those to our website, Philly has sort of been creeping up the list in recent months. But it moved up, I think, 42 spots to get into the top 10. Can you very briefly just run down who's our competition in the top 10 and where did we end up?
well, Boston and New York are the competition in the top 10. But the way you ended up there is because of a couple of things that are occurring along the transit hub in terms of Fishtown and that central north-south corridor. There's a mixed income housing bonus program, and the Philadelphia Housing Authority has offered financial incentives to property owners. So you see a lot of that transit oriented development that's coming on board. Also, the governor of Pennsylvania, along with Massachusetts,
Yeah.
by the way, have proposed hundreds of millions of dollars to bring that type of thing. So what you see is if you track along that north-south hub, north-south axis rather, you'll see a lot of transit-oriented development in those type of areas.
And I guess you guys, as you look at Philly, what were the metrics that changed? I sort of put a few into the script, but you look at what sort of things that bumped Philly up.
Well, we're looking at the number of applicants that apply for rental housing. We're
Yeah,
looking at the amount of stock. We look at the vacancies in a market in terms of how many units are occupied. One of the things that has pushed Philly up of those three is the increase in terms of housing stock that's coming on board this year.
yeah.
We're projecting over 500,000 in 2024 units nationwide and another 500,000 next year. And the way we calculate the market, we look at the percentage of existing new supply coming on board
Yeah,
versus stock. And when you see aggressive numbers like 4% of stock, which Philly's number is this year,
yeah.
you see that that's in a very aggressive development. So the market is voting with picks and shovels to be able to put new development up because they believe in the demand.
But there's still a net shortage though of rental housing stock.
Correct, there
Yeah.
is.
And one
And
of
it,
the one of the stats you had in there, you said apartment hunters saved 46% more personalized searches compared to the same time last year, indicating that people were saving Philly when they were looking for things. I guess aside from some of the the transit and what's coming online, is it a quality of life thing too? I would imagine, because Philly had a youth brain drain for decades, and then it sort of slowed down and stopped. And but people are coming to town. It's a cool place for people out of college or in their 20s or 30s.
Well, what you see with the Philly is there's a lot of life science downtown
Yep.
that's combined with the technology, the tech hub type of applications. So when folks graduate from the excellent academic institutions in Philadelphia, what they're looking for is to stay within the same general area. So you see that combination, and you see the young Z type demographic that's willing to rent and willing to stay in the same areas. So it's a win-win. So you've got universities that are churning out
Yeah.
graduates, but you've also got the tech hubs that are being developed at the same time in the same area.
Yeah. This was something that when Ed Rendell was mayor, back in the 90s, he wanted to stop that brain drain because we were losing all of those graduates from the wonderful institutions like University of Pennsylvania, Temple, Villanova, Bryn Mawr College, and they were leaving. There was nothing here for them. It was a blue collar economy, and now, as you've said, life sciences and all of those high tech folks have a footprint here. You mentioned who else was in the top 10? Obviously, Boston, New York, but who's in the top 10, Doug?
The other people in the top 10 that we saw were Minneapolis, Minnesota, Atlanta, Georgia, Queens, New York, Detroit, Cleveland.
Yeah, Minneapolis. I'm a closet Vikings fan when I'm not rooting for the Eagles. Minneapolis is an okay town. One of our folks on the call today. He spent a good bit of time up in Minneapolis. Maybe they can. What is it about Minneapolis that puts them at number one?
Lifestyle
Really,
and its affordability. Mhm.
and better than the life. Well, affordability here is has been creeping up in the last 20 years, but
Correct.
lifestyle here not as good.
Well, I wouldn't say it's not as good because you have a much broader base
Yeah.
and you have a much more diverse, your gateway community. So you have a much broader diversity in terms of economic, social, demographic, whereas Minneapolis is more of a contained type of community.
So, do you ever see Philly going any higher than number seven in rental desirability in your top 10?
Oh, I believe so. I think
Really?
that with the collaboration of the governance, I mean, when you start governance and business, when you start that collaboration,
Mm,
you will see a lot of incentive. I mean, the governor has done a lot. Your new mayor has done a
yep,
lot. I mean, let's face it, your budget is in great shape where a lot of cities
yep.
it's not. So, you
Lot of
know,
that unspent pandemic money.
exactly. So I see it going a lot higher. Yes.
Oh, that's excellent news. Well, you can see all the latest Philly rental rankings and rental desirability by going to hapcophiladelphia.com, and also by the folks like Doug Ressler and his folks who generate these incredible surveys and studies by going to rentcafe.com. Well, Rent Cafe's manager of business intelligence, Doug Ressler, we cannot thank you enough for joining us. I hope this is going to be the first visit of many. Keep us posted. Esther Hermosi, who's your wonderful public relations person, is marvelous about letting us know. But please keep us posted and come back anytime.
Stay in touch. Thank you.
Absolutely. Hey, our next guest on Landlord Tenant World from Hapco, Philadelphia, here in the city of brotherly love. She is one of the latest additions to Hapco Philadelphia's board of directors. And just to give you a little bit of background on her, and you see her pop up in the Zoom box, she had a full scholarship to play tennis at St. Joseph's University, not far from where I am right now. And she went on to be a teaching pro at the Julian Krinsky School of Tennis at the Narberth Tennis Club in Narberth, Pennsylvania. Her father has been a longstanding member of Hapco Philadelphia, and I guess she kind of learned about the rental industry from a very early age, and that is how she brings a brand new perspective to the board. Please welcome Hapco Philadelphia is one of our newest board members, Debbie Jadeja. Come on, Jadeja. Did I get it? Was I
Yeah,
close?
yeah,
God.
that was great.
See, with a last name like Shimel, you're hypersensitive to pronunciation. And I thought, oh man, I was going to get it. Well, Debbie, number one, congratulations on joining the Hapco Philadelphia Board of Directors. I mean, they're just ecstatic and excited to have you guys.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I'm really excited about this opportunity.
And I just to for in the interest of full disclosure, I took tennis lessons from Debbie's father, Mayur, for many years at the Narberth Tennis Club just after sunrise, and I had no idea until you were brought on the board that your dad has been a Hapco Philadelphia member for many, many years, a rental property owner. It's the funny, the things that just don't come up across the net. You know what I'm saying? So, how
Yeah.
did you get interested in the whole rental industry? I mean, were you kind of going around with your dad as he checked on properties or rent? I mean, how did it all happen?
Yeah, it was really just by proximity. So when I was younger, like really young, my dad would do a lot of the stuff himself, painting, rehabbing, that kind of thing. And he would let me tag along and help out. So I would help paint or switch out,
Oh, wow.
switch that kind of thing. And I really love the hands-on part of this, and I still do. And then as I got older, in high school and college, I started helping more on the admin side of things. And my father was a little old school with how he did things, and I realized I could,
I can see that.
yeah. So I thought, I can help out here. There's things I can do to make this ship sail smoother, and so that's when I got really involved. And then finally in 2021, I decided, property management was something I wanted to pursue, full time. And
Oh,
that's how I ended up here.
oh, well, that's wonderful, and God bless you for that happening because as I say, they're happy as heck to have you on the board of directors. Now, how many properties does your dad have? Are they mostly in Philly, the suburbs? Where are they?
Yeah, they are mostly in Philly, West Philadelphia and Southwest Philadelphia. Um, and, it's around 30 properties, mostly all residential,
Yeah.
single family duplex, that kind of thing. And it's really been interesting to, start learning the ropes and also all the headaches that can come with property management.
Exactly. And as Hapco Philadelphia has been, advocating to try to simplify the process because as government becomes more involved in, rules and regs, as our next guest, Paul Cohen, will attest to, it's become a much more complex industry. It's become a much more costly industry with, regulations and fees and taxes and other sorts of layered costs that may not be a direct cost, but it causes rental property owners to have to spend more money. And it makes it a little bit more challenging to stay in the industry.
Absolutely. That's actually one of the things I really care about is the importance of mom and pop housing
Yep.
providers in the
Yep.
city. I really think they do a great deal to keep safe housing affordable, and they rent to people in the community. So, hopefully through Hapco, I can sort of help educate people on the value of mom and pop landlords and what they bring. I think that's really important.
Yeah, we were talking, I think, a show or two ago about an op-ed that was in the Inquirer by a tenant advocate who'd had a bad experience with a landlord in the city. And as Hapco Philadelphia says, most rental property owners are the good guys. They are the legal license guys, but there are some bad apples out there. And but oftentimes, rental property owners are characterized as greedy corporate money grubbers. And as you've said, the majority of rental property in Philadelphia and in many other cities is owned by small independent moms and pops. They're not the big corporations.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think I've got a unique background in that, my parents immigrated here 30 odd years ago. And so they sort of taught me the struggles that they faced.
Yep.
And the first hurdle they come across is finding housing and rental because pretty much everybody will ask for, a credit check, a background check,
Yep.
and proof of income. And when you've just got here, you don't really have a background to check. So, the majority of our rentals are rented out to immigrants, and that's something that I
Oh, that's
also
wonderful.
about as well. And I don't know that the big guys are doing that, whereas we try to, weave that and go on people's word and help people find housing.
You have a relationship with your renters. That's the one thing Hapco Philadelphia has advocated for decades is, communication, education, mediation, establish a relationship. It's not just an electronic transfer for your rent every month, that your people on both sides, and rental owners can't do without tenants. Tenants can't do without rental owners.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's one of the things my father has expressed and taught me is that you need to always sort of keep that open line of communication and, work together to solve a problem. It can't just be, this is the issue and sort of try to fight, but work through, whatever it is and come to a solution and agreement together.
I don't know if you heard our first guest from rentcafe.com. They're head of business intelligence, talking about Philadelphia cracking the top 10 for rental desirability. And that's got to be good news for, folks like you and your dad.
Absolutely. Yeah. And another thing is we've been working with other agencies in the city that help, find housing for immigrants. And there's a huge influx of people coming from, all over the world and trying to find housing here. So that influx definitely is helping. And then on the other side, because there are so many younger people moving to the city from, say, New York, Boston, I also think there's a new crop of homeowners and investment owners, which I think Hapco can tap into, and I sort of hope to help them do that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Your vision for what you see for Hapco Philadelphia's membership is absolutely wonderful. Before we go, tennis or rental property owner, which is your favorite?
Oh gosh, I gotta say the tennis sort of helps with any other headaches that are going on. Bashing a ball back and forth over the net really just does wonders.
It does work out a lot of stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, listen, one of Hapco Philadelphia's newest board members, Debbie Jadeja. Thanks so much for being on Landlord Tenant World. I got it that time, didn't I?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, tell your father I pronounced it correctly. Please give my best. Debbie, keep us posted and let us know if there's anything we need to be getting out there to Hapco Philadelphia members and the rental community around the country. Come back anytime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Debbie, thanks so much. Hey, our next guest needs little in the way of introduction. He's Hapco Philadelphia's eyes and ears at Philadelphia City Hall and in Harrisburg. He's a nationally renowned rental and real estate attorney who once held the Guinness Book of World Records for the largest stacked penny pyramid. A big landlord tenant world. Welcome back to the man who is still very proud of that record, our general counsel, Paul Cohen. How are you, Paul?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Doug.
Hey, we continue to sort of, see dribs and drabs from eviction diversion program, the program that mandates eviction before proceedings can begin. And I know you and Hapco advocated, communication and education and mediation for many years before this program was ever created. What have you been seeing? I know you're just back from a 3-week around the world trip in a hot air balloon or something like that. But what are some of the recent stuff you've seen from the eviction diversion program? Because that seems to be a lot of the stuff that we get in the folks in the office at Hapco Philadelphia get. What are the updates? What are the changes? What's been happening out there?
Actually a 6-week trip, but don't tell anyone.
Oh,
I ended up
like
I ended up in Scottsdale, so I'm jealous of Doug living in Scottsdale. It's beautiful out there, nice and warm. It's great. And just real quick, I did want to welcome Debbie to the board. Just want to say that we are thrilled to have her on the board. It's going to be a great addition.
Oh yeah. And we've got a few more ones that will be coming up on our upcoming shows too. I think we've got 2 more new members. So it's so exciting, so exciting. So what should folks out there be looking out for if they're heading toward lockout eviction situations?
Okay, so just to go back just a little bit, the purpose for diversion was basically to put a sort of a delay in being able to file an eviction against the tenants so that the tenants could get rental assistance.
Yep.
And rental assistance was the key to diversion initially. At least that was the purpose for it.
Right.
So because rental assistance was out there, the government was offering it, they had the moratorium was going on, all these things were happening. The idea was to not allow landlords to immediately file for an eviction because the tenants were hopefully going to be able to get this rental assistance. Yep. The federal rental assistance is all over now, but the city of Philadelphia came along and said, you know what, we're going to still offer a type of rental assistance. They call it tenant financial assistance. And there's now, was originally supposed to be 15 million. It's now 30 million, which is awesome.
Yeah.
It's doing a great job in appropriating the money for the financial assistance. So the change is, which is what you're asking me for, is that it was originally, you can get a 3,000, you had to owe less than $3,000. So the tenant had to have a back due balance of $3,000 or less to be able to qualify for rental assistance. They would then get the rental assistance if they qualified, and it would pay for an additional 2 months of ongoing rent. So the first change that happened, which is awesome, is that they've increased that $3,000 to $3,500, which is great.
And one of the things that, you know, the industry has been contending with in Philadelphia in the last year is issues related to the municipal court's landlord tenant office. These are privately deputized agents who go out and effectuate lockouts and evictions. There were some violent incidents going both ways. There was a push by city council and in Harrisburg to reform the process. I think there was a new Senate bill that's just been introduced to eliminate private entities from doing it at all. What's been the latest with that? Because, you know, no one ever wants to go through lockout and eviction, but they do happen.
So there is a bill that's floating around in Harrisburg. There's also a bill in Philadelphia. It's not necessarily to eliminate the landlord tenant officer. It's to change the processes, to put more regulations in place.
More training.
Yeah, and we're not really sure where that's all going to end up. If I had a crystal ball, I would say that neither of those laws are going to get passed. And instead, what's going to happen is the court's going to come along and come up with a program for dealing with this situation. It's really something that should be in the court's purview. It's a procedure for how to effectuate a lockout. And when you're talking about procedures, you generally have the courts dealing with procedural issues.
Right.
Laws are passed by legislatures, and procedures are passed by the courts. And not to get too technical, but the courts have the ability to actually suspend any law that they think conflicts with the procedures. So the courts could come along also and just say that law is suspended. So my guess is that we don't have to really concern ourselves too much with those laws that are out there, because the court's probably going to come along and come up with rules to deal with this situation.
It also goes back to, you know, in addition to the additional training, they would have to be, I guess, a certain status where they would have to be deputized constables from outside of Philadelphia. I'm trying to remember some of those reforms that were thrown around early on at council. And then there was always this background thing of, well, just let the sheriff's office take over the 100% of it, because they do take a small percentage of some of those cases, do they not? But the sheriff's office in Philadelphia has had its whole host of problems, namely corruption and, you know, misappropriation of money. And the Inquirer just editorialized this week to do away with the sheriff's department. Is there a function that the sheriff's department could fulfill if they were to retool the whole thing and, you know, start performing those on a steady basis, or would that not be a good thing?
Yeah, in theory, it could be done through the sheriff's office. As you said, there's problems with the sheriff's office that have been well documented. I'm not going to go through all those. Yeah. But suffice to say, yes, it could be done through the sheriff's office, or they could set up a separate constable system. So the counties have a separate constable that goes ahead and does that performs that function. Years ago, there was a constable in Philadelphia, but there was a problem with
Problems with
corruption
that system too.
with that too, and that's why they
Yeah.
did away with the constable, and then
Yeah.
they came out with this landlord tenant idea. So we'll have to wait.
Who has the model? Is there a model for this sort of thing that somewhere else in a big city around the country that maybe Philly should be looking at, or maybe has looked at? I don't know if there's an ideal system, because it's not a fun process to go through regardless.
No, it's not. It's a very dangerous process, and it's difficult. And the fact that only 2 incidents or 3 incidents happened in some 50 some
50 years, yeah.
tells you that the system was working. But as we all know, we live in a very reactive society. So when something happens, next thing you know, we got to pass laws
as
to
long as
change
politicians
everything.
are involved. Exactly.
Yes.
Before we go, Paul, anything else that folks out there need to know before we say goodbye?
Just that, yeah, this is very important with regard to the diversion program, that if you are possibly getting rental assistance, you think you're going to get it, you think you've been approved or what have you, if it hasn't been approved within 30 days and you decide, because you have a right to file a landlord tenant complaint, then they've changed the regulations to basically say that if you do that and file a complaint, you will no longer qualify for the rental assistance. So what I'm recommending to everyone is be careful. If you think you're going to get that rental assistance, don't file that landlord tenant complaint, because once you file the complaint, you will not get the rental assistance.
You're done. And you can get information like this from Paul at all of our Ask the Attorney sessions throughout the year. You can go to hapcophiladelphia.com to see when the next one is scheduled. It's a great benefit of being a member. You get free legal advice. If you're not a Hapco Philadelphia member, join, because you'll save millions of dollars in legal fees. Right, Paul?
Absolutely.
Well, General Counsel Paul Cohen, thanks for being on the Landlord Tenant World podcast with us here from Hapco Philadelphia. That is our time for this edition. Big thanks to our guests from rentcafe.com, their manager of business intelligence, Doug Ressler, Hapco Philadelphia's new board member, Debbie Jadeja, and General Counsel Paul Cohen. If you're a rental investment property owner, manager, and vendor, and you're not a member of Hapco Philadelphia, check out our website at hapcophiladelphia.com. You can look for upcoming education events, free education events for rental owners, and Ask the Attorney sessions, hapcophiladelphia.com for all the details. And we want your questions for future editions of the podcast, so you can email them to me directly at doug@focusmediaservices.com, doug@focusmediaservices.com, or just post them on our Hapco Philadelphia webpage. For everybody here at Hapco Philadelphia, I'm Doug Scheinmel, reminding you that it's a landlord tenant world out there. See you next time. Thanks for listening to Landlord Tenant World. To learn more, visit Hapco Philadelphia at hapcophiladelphia.com. And we'll see you next time.